Good morning to you, and Happy New Year. Exactly 25 years ago to the week, last week, 25 years ago, I was hired as the senior minister of the Center for Spiritual Living. Yeah. I was 8. I began in 1994, and the custom then among Centers for Spiritual Living was to begin the year reviewing the first 4 chapters of this book, The Science of Mind, by our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes. This is my original one that I used in all of my classes, and it has a plastic cover in it with all my highlights and post-its, and I just cherish it. I still use it. So 25 years later, we're picking up that tradition to review again these first 4 chapters, which are the thing itself, the way it works, what it does, and how to use it. So we're starting with this review of the basics of science of mind. And by the way, I loved what Reverend Tara said, that we're continuing these free classes every week on Wednesday for anybody who wants to learn about this teaching. They can do so at 7 p.m. It's open to everyone. And now there's something new added. We're adding panels of questions and answers for people who really want to have their questions answered. So we're starting with this review because when we began planning 2019 and our whole theme, we thought it was a good idea to start with the basics of our teaching before we get out into the world, started with anything else. Because although we're looking this year at spirituality in action, and we're doing that through such topics as spiritually motivated social action, diversity and inclusion, freedom of thought, respect for other nations and people. We're doing all of that through the filter, the lens of science of mind. So this year we're going to be asking ourselves all year long, how do I apply my spirituality to what wants to happen in the world? How does what I'm learning at the Center for Spiritual Living influence the way I engage in conversations about politics, charity? What does spirituality in action look like for me? How will people know I'm a spiritual person when I'm active? So I wondered about this 25 years ago. I went back to my files and got the message out, my notes from 25 years ago in the second week of January to see what did I say. Was anybody there? It's a surprise that you kept me as I read through. So anyway, I've got the notes and I'm going to reflect on them. And if you've been hanging around here for a while, you know that when we say the second topic, the way it works, when we say it, we mean the thing itself. And when we say the thing itself, what we mean by that is the source of all being, the wisdom, the love, the power, the energy, the strength, the beauty, the intelligence, the mind, the spirit, the truth that is the all-powerful, everywhere present Creator, or God, if you prefer. We are talking about the gender-neutral, all-inclusive, infinite, everywhere present, whatever it is. Yeah. So our question today is, how does that work? Or another way to ask it is, thinking of the thing itself as absolute love, how does that work in my life? Or thinking about the thing itself as the immortal, eternal presence of spirit, how does that work in my life? Dr. Ernest Holmes, in the second chapter of The Science of Mind, he offers an answer to that question. He says, the thing itself, spirit, it works in your life and it works in my life by working through us. Not so much like a power that is controlling us, not like a puppeteer that's got our strings. No, it's more like a power that flows through you and me. Now, that's not the only way that it works. But when it comes to you and me and how we show up in this world, it's a very important piece of the puzzle. How does creation flow through me? Dr. Ernest Holmes, one of his students towards the end of his life, his student's name was George Bendall. What an interesting character he was. He was a minister also. And at the end there of Dr. Ernest, his life, at the end of his life, George was his aide, like his assistant, his driver. And so he was there watching everything he did. And I was fortunate enough to be able to take a class with Dr. George Bendall, and this when I was in the School of Ministry. And it was fascinating to just sit and listen to him tell us all about Dr. Ernest Holmes, how he meditated, what was important to him, what he spoke about. And Dr. George Bendall said that towards the end, Ernest Holmes always and only spoke about 3 topics exactly. And these are those topics. Number 1, that there is only one God common to all people in and through all beings in creation. And the second is that we are surrounded by and infused with this God presence, which not only creates, but does so in part by responding to our thought in a way that Dr. Ernest Holmes called with mechanical regularity. And the third thing was that it was so important for us to use this power to love one another, just like Jesus of Nazareth taught us. Indeed, Dr. Ernest Holmes characterized the power of creation as absolute love. And he called it the self-givingness of the universe. And he advised us to harmonize ourselves with that, to sync ourselves with that, or even better, to realize and understand that that is exactly and only who we are. Universal love in action. Now, it's that second point that we are considering today, our relationship to the divine, our identity, and the creative nature of our thought and how that all works. Now, in one of those Wednesday night free classes, we call them Wednesday Night Wisdom, open to everyone, 7 p.m. In one of those in the past, we studied the book with the title Cure by Joe Marchant, and the subtitle of the book is A Journey into the Science of Mind over Body. It's all about the latest research in medicine and science about the mind-body connection, and we got to learn in that class about the mind's astonishing ability to create substantial changes in our bodies. And it got us to thinking in that class, thinking about the question, what instructions are we giving to life right now by what we accept as true? How does what is inside us, in our mind and hearts, how does that impact how we progress and thrive in this world? How does what we dwell on and think about a lot as an individual and as a nation, how does that become a self-fulfilling prophecy? Not to become afraid of our thinking, but to discover if there is a better way, especially if we accept this idea that the creative intelligence of life is flowing through us and taking the shape of our inner life. So let's get some examples from my notes of 25 years ago. Now, I think it was Oprah Winfrey's show in 1993, it must have been, but there was a show on the impact of false HIV test results on individuals. People received an HIV positive test result that wasn't correct, and how they manifested the same symptoms of full-blown AIDS. Wasting, decreased energy, night sweats, and even though the results were incorrect. Now, another example, a little more upbeat. In the 90s, before I took this job, I was a volunteer for the Shanti Foundation, an organization that trains volunteers to provide emotional support for people who have terminal diagnoses. And one of my very first clients told me about the devastating news he had received from his doctor that his T-cell count, his immune system was very, very low. You know, in those days, we didn't have a really good handle on virus suppression. And so this was bad news, and the doctor told him that stress was a very dangerous factor and that he was not to worry. Which he said, I don't know how to do. And I had no advice, you know. I don't know how you simply change the direction of your thought. So he took matters into his own hands. And he went on what he called an I Love Lucy binge watch. He got all of the episodes and he played them back to back in the background while he was doing everything, to the point where he could recite along with the actors and the laugh tracks. You see what he was doing? He was flooding his mind with a kind of innocent, playful joy. And don't you know that it had the kind of result that is reported in this more contemporary book, Cure? His mood improved. His fight came back. But even more important than that, and even more important, I guess, than the health improvement, is that he became an inspiration for the other clients, for people who had given up, who had lost hope, like a poster child for innocent joy. And I'd never forgotten that. And that's the way it works, by working through us in the direction we set by our acceptance. Another example, and I don't recall, because it's not annotated in my notes, I don't recall where I read about it, but I think it was a Yale University experiment in which volunteers were asked to walk down a corridor and to stop when a light flashed. Now, there was indeed no light at all, but more than half of those volunteers who were tested at some point stopped. That's the way it works, by working through us in the direction of our acceptance. Another way of saying that is, perhaps what you and I are expecting out of life may turn out to be an accurate predictor of outcomes. Another example. Once when Henry Ford was asked if he was worried about losing a whole lot of money if one of his plans didn't work out, he said that one should not think about things going wrong. To quote Mr. Ford, you must never, even for a second, let yourself think that you can fail. Our first principle is that failure is impossible. You may not get what you're trying to do right the first time, or the second time, or the 10th time, or the 100th time, but if you shut out of your mind the possibility of being licked, then you're bound to win. Well, so now when I gave this message 25 years ago, I was 25 years younger. So it came out of my mouth in a more positive, personal, motivational way. More so than I am comfortable with today. Because now I know that metaphysics is not a teaching about getting what you want when you want it. It's not that simple. Anyone who's been around this for 25 some years knows that metaphysics is less about getting what you want and more about making sure that what you want in life is in alignment with oneness and truth and goodness, the thing itself. Yes, it's fine to focus on success, of course it is, but not at the expense of other people. Because oneness, because goodness, because truth, because of the way it works. Now I know that when oneness and goodness and truth are missing from my ambition, I may get what I want, but something important will be absent, and I will begin to spin my wheels or hit a glass ceiling and not progress where I want to go. Metaphysics, now I know, is about staying with goodness, truth, and oneness when I get what I want and when I don't get what I want. In the good times and in the bad times. Metaphysics, the focus is less about manifestation and more about realization. Well, actually, Dr. Ernest Holmes wrote about it right in the very beginning of the book, the dedication before it even starts. I wish I had read it. It would have saved a lot of time. He wrote right here, these lessons are dedicated to that truth which frees us from ourselves, which enables us to see through the mist to the eternal and changeless reality. Well, you see, having read that now, I would advise young Edward, turn your mind entirely to the eternal and changeless reality and see through the mist of confusion and be free from unhelpful clinging and outcomes. Now I would advise my younger self that even better than the idea that I can change my life by changing my thinking, which is as true as it goes. Even better than that is this, that I can change my life by purifying my motives. Because, it's the feeling under the thoughts that count. It's the deeply held beliefs that I've accepted into my body and being that count. It's not the random thoughts that I have. It's the everything that makes me the me that I am today. My ambitions, my dreams, my acceptance, my behavior. We call that my consciousness. It's the drive that's hidden in my heart that will eventually create this world because of the creative genius that lives in me, and that's how it works. So yes, it's helpful to become aware of what is in my mental household. And it's very helpful to search through my understanding, my motives and my attitudes and my ambition, and if possible, bring it all into alignment with the spiritual values like the ones we are studying in 2019. Oneness and truth and integrity and inclusivity and empowerment and creativity and gratitude and stewardship and unity. Because when I do dwell on those qualities, when I do make a habit of living in them, they will begin to influence what I want. They will begin to influence how I show up in the world. I will start taking responsibility for my impact on the environment, for sure. I will start advocating for the vulnerable. It follows, I will. I will support freedom of thought. I will be led to share and include and to treat people fairly and honorably. I will become more resilient to disappointment, and I will become more and more governed from the inside and less governed from the outside. That's how it works. And I will start to move away from a me-focused life to a we-focused ambition. Now, I said if we dwell on these values, and I could have said dwell upon the thing itself. You know, in the opening of chapter 2, in The Science of Mind by Dr. Ernest Holmes, that deals with this topic, he says something very important, and I cannot close today without mentioning it. He says that the thing itself functions at the level of our concept of it. Oh, my. Well, I can see how we have to ask, how big is my God idea? And how close is my God idea? And can I grow that? And can I become so familiar with it that I trust it? Or another way of saying it is, perhaps the whole point of Science of Mind is to teach us how to realize the divine. To grow in our knowing and understanding of that which is eternal and immortal. So much so that when disaster strikes, we see hope. That when society becomes corrupt or fails, we bring love. So that when hearts ache, we bring comfort. So that when we perceive lack, we manifest sharing and help and community and compassion and ideas and solutions and respect. There is something in you and in me and in every person and in every living being which right now is in its original state, something that is untouched by the bumps and trials of living in this world, something that is pure and serene and whole. And may we stay steadfastly aware of that presence within us and listen to it more than we listen to our ambitions. And perhaps then we will hear what Dr. Ernest Holmes heard when he was in meditation. And he wrote it like this: I was told to live by some inner mystic presence. I was told to live and to love and to laugh and to be glad. I was told to be still and to know of the one almighty power in and through all. I was told to let that power work through me and in me. And I believed that voice. and I am healed. Ah, he wrote, the joy of life. I invite you now to breathe in with me and to exhale into a moment of quiet contemplation. Let each one of us recognize the divine in our own way, whether I call it God or the living Spirit Almighty or ultimate love. I know that it is beyond all names and beyond all natures, and yet I use these words to point to the eternal so that I may remember that I live and breathe and move and have my being in the everywhere presentness of eternal goodness, so that I may identify myself with that and understand and realize that there are no blocks between me and my true nature. This I hold to be true for everyone in this auditorium. And even speaking this word of truth has the effect of melting away any hypnotic thought that separates me from my true nature. And so I invite into full expression all the good that there is, all the rightness and joy and all the wholeness for myself and for those around me. I let this idea so guide me and influence me that I know in my heart that there is something new taking place in me right now. It fills me with a joy of acceptance, an innocent, playful expectation. And so I bring this prayer to an end by saying, I let it go. I release it into that aspect of the divine we call the law. And together we say, and so it is.